All right, today we're talking about how to generate new jobs with AI. Everyone's talking about job losses with AI. My guest today is Mike Ghaffary. He's going to be talking about how you can create new jobs with AI, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everyone, John Corcoran here. I'm the host of the show, and if you've listened before, each week we feature smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies. And if you check out the archives, we've got Netflix and Grubhub and Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard. Lots of great episodes for you to check out. And of course, this episode brought to you by our company, Rise25 and Podcast Copilot, where we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you to run your podcast. We are the easy button for any company to launch and run a podcast. We do three things: strategy, accountability, and full execution. In fact, we invented what some are calling the Wix of B2B podcasting. It's our platform, Podcast Copilot. So go check out our website, rise25.com, or you can email us at support@rise25.com. All right. As I mentioned, my guest today is Mike Ghaffary. He is a general partner at Burst Capital. It's a venture capital firm founded by former Yelp executives, where he was instrumental in building that platform. He's got an incredible background involved in so many different companies. I don't know how we're going to get through all of them, including even ones in the podcast space. Stitcher. He's one of the co-founders of Stitcher. But it's such a pleasure to have you here, Mike. And you said earlier when we were getting started that you're a founder hound and you started profit and nonprofit companies and lemonade stands and all this kind of stuff. And then, like me, buying and selling trading cards, probably back in the heyday when we all thought that we were going to retire off the
comic books
card.
too. Yeah.
Oh God. And they're still in my garage and they're worthless, or they're worth the same amount as they were 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about that. So lemonade stand and then buying and selling trading cards. What are some of the little side hustles that young Mike had?
Yeah, I mean, I did everything. I even had one where I got a very burly friend to pull this like sled on wheels that we did, called it Sledco. That's so funny. I still have pictures of that. Anything we thought that there was a market for, kids would pay money for. Me and a couple of friends, we were trying to start businesses around it. And trading cards, at one point, I found there was a big interest in X-Men trading cards, these Marvel. So we would get all these binders full of X-Men cards and put them together and create our own packs. And at some point we got in trouble with the sixth grade teacher. He's like, there's too much of this going on, like held us back. So yeah.
And what drove all this?
Startups.
Were you around? Were your parents entrepreneurial? Were like, what drove all this? What was it? You just born
I don't know
this
what
way?
it was, because I think maybe it skipped a generation, because my grandfather and grandparents were very entrepreneurial. But my parents were, my dad worked in software and technology, so I saw that side of it and had worked for startups, but he was more on the software and engineering side, engineering management, not necessarily like going and starting things himself. Although when he was younger, he had done, I think, one startup, and then and my mom was a social worker for many years and had like different career for that. So it's not like they were telling me, oh, you got to go do startups and things like that. But something I had it in me. I don't know. I just liked starting things.
And your background is Persian, right? Were your grandparents immigrants to this country?
Yeah, well, both my grandparents kind of immigrated and my parents really came. They came here when they were 18 years old, to study, undergrad and then grad school, and then ended up staying here.
Because sometimes you see, first generation immigrants that come to this country they become entrepreneurs by, not by choice, but because they have to.
Yeah, necessity. Yeah. I mean, for my parents, they were lucky that it was good timing when they came, and they were 18. They came at a young age, were able to do all their schooling here. And that was before there was a revolution in Iran, and it was like a lot better relations and easier to come. So they were able to be very credentialed, I guess, going into the workforce here versus, but like you said, by necessity, coming like post their education and having to start over here.
You do hear stories like that. People have got they were a doctor in their home country, and they come to the United States and they have to be a janitor or some crazy stuff. Yeah.
They were more fortunate than that. But still obviously a grind to like start a new life in a new country, and get everything off the ground.
And you grew up in LA, but then you moved to Cupertino, the heart of Silicon Valley. What was that? What kind of an impact did that have on you?
I mean, I think it had a huge impact, right? I remember when I was, and what did I know? I was like an 11-year-old kid, and my dad was saying, "Hey, we should move the family up from Southern California to Northern California," and all the actions over there, and they're changing the world. So he really saw that. To his credit, it was really impressive. And at the time, what did I know? I was 11 or 12. I didn't want change. My mom didn't like change, and we are like, "No, no, let's not move. It's warmer here. It's colder there." I quickly realized, and that was the best thing that ever happened to our family because I just got exposed to so many new people, ideas, and and maybe, I was already entrepreneurial before that, but it wasn't about tech. And then I started getting, starting at age 12, I started taking apart computers and rebuilding them. I taught myself how to do assembly language and C++ and software programming all in like middle school and high school. And all my friends' parents were somehow in the tech industry. And so that really fueled even more interest in what was going on and this idea that I could do a tech startup or get really involved, so starting by age 17, 18, 19, my friends and I were all talking about what tech startups we could do. And I started working at a software company at age 17. So it really just helps, I think, get ingrained. I know for some kids, and now it's gotten so extreme, it could probably feel overwhelming. So that's the balance you got to see with your kids. But for me, it was really motivating and cultivating.
And one of your first startups was around age 18, 19 when you were in college. What was that one?
That was called College Elite. It was an online intern recruiting platform. I don't,
Okay.
it's so long ago. I don't even have it on my LinkedIn and stuff anymore. But it was really cool because I got to work with a couple of close friends who are both actually really successful investors and founders in their own right now. And I learned so much from those early experiences. I worked for this first at 17. I worked for this software company, Mark Analysis Research Corporation, that became part of MSC Software, doing computer aided engineering like CAD and CAE software, and you do virtual prototyping. And then I got this other idea, and so it just you learn a lot from hiring people, recruit. We had Cooley Godward was our law firm. We'd have board meetings at their offices. We recruited Roger Craig, this football player, to be on our board. In addition,
You're
like
18, 19 years old and you get
yeah,
Roger Craig?
yeah. Tibco Software, if you know Tibco's middleware company, they were like one of our first big customers, and we're going to Tibco's. And then we got Sun Microsystems, and we actually pitched Max Levchin early on and got PayPal before it was part of eBay, and eBay separately as customers. Just like you're in the mix and you're meeting all these other entrepreneurs. It
Okay,
was
there
really
had to be
fun.
some downsides to that because this is like the before, and then there has to be some downside to that. Were there any negative side to all that,
Oh
or
yeah. I mean, first of all, I didn't sleep. My parents were like, why? They saw how much I was working all the time during school. At one point, they tried to bribe me. They're like, if we tried to give you some allowance, they really weren't giving me any money I had like full scholarship and paid my own way mainly. But they're like, if we did give you some money, would that somehow get you to like work less? Because it seems like you have bags under your, like
hmm
you're not sleeping at night. So there's health trade-offs. You gotta eventually have to learn how to balance, sleep and exercise and things like that. And luckily, I was able to still, do great for going to grad school and everything. But it can obviously have trade-off with school if you're trying to go to school at the same time. I think doing a startup in college, if you can think of one and do one and find a group, is an incredible learning experience. Everyone should try.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you end up co-founding Stitcher. I want to hear about this. This is one of the very early podcasting apps. As a longtime podcaster, I want to
Yeah.
hear the story about how did you come up with this idea? 2007, which is, actually I started my podcast around 2010, so it's 3 years before that.
Yeah, very early. Probably we were a little too early to market is the hindsight. It's taught me as an
Yeah.
investor now that timing is a big part of, I don't know if it's everything, but it's a critical part of the equation. So I had done one summer in business school. I'd worked at BCG, Boston Consulting Group, and I made a friend there. This guy, Noah, he was one of the first 5 employees at StubHub, the online ticketing marketplace. So he was very entrepreneurial, even though he was working in this different corporate environment, BCG, like I was for that summer. And he had gone to Wharton Business School, and I'd gone to HBS. And so we stayed in touch as two entrepreneurial guys. I think we both realized we had this kind of startup-y energy. And so I was working at a venture fund, Summit Partners. He left his job and started thinking of startup ideas, and I was kind of advising him, giving him perspective. And he came up with the Stitcher idea. He's like, "What about this podcast recording?" And I had heard many ideas he was saying, but I was like, "This is the one. Like, this is super interesting. You should." So I got really excited about that one. And eventually, that led to him recruiting me to come join him full time as a co-founder. So it was an amazing experience, but we were very early to the market. We had the name
Yeah.
Stitcher was like you could stitch together different shows was our concept. We actually helped a bunch of first VentureBeat and other smaller publications, and then we got TechCrunch. We launched the TechCrunch headline. So we helped a lot of these publications launch their first podcast because we realized
Mm.
there wasn't enough podcast content out there. But we also
So
like
you
I
kind of
led
had to
business
become an agency as well, then
a
helping
little bit,
them.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
I led
Yeah.
business development, so I did deals with all these like CNN and Fox Sports and all these different publications. I remember IGN, this gaming network, which this guy Roy Bahat, who's now Bloomberg beta investor, like he was running that at the time. He was one of our first BD deals. So I'd go cut these BD deals to get all the content on our platform, and then started creating shows. So it was really fun, but very very early. And
Yeah.
so
I
the
mean, you
company
must have been
eventually,
explaining to
yeah,
people what a podcast was from the beginning and
yeah.
why it mattered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was the thing. We knew it was the future, but it was, that's the question. And now obviously it's validating to see how much podcasting has exploded. And the company eventually sold to Sirius Satellite Radio for a decent outcome. But as founders, we had already been our equity mainly like wiped out from then. So it's like a long journey.
So what's the lesson in that? Why was your equity wiped out?
Well, the company sold an earlier time for basically nothing, and then
Mhm.
it sold again and again. So it kind of built up. So it's a few lessons are one, be really careful of timing. Really ask yourself if there's like going to be an exit market. It's so tough because the environment you're predicting is like 7 to 10 years from now,
Yeah.
right? But you've got to have that ability. Some of the best entrepreneurs have some of that sense of where the puck is headed, and you can't be too early. So you really got to be honest about that. But it's a very difficult part, and the investors I think help you gauge that as well. And then number two is if you do have something, maybe we should have held on, like go profitable or go if you see it's not going quite on the hockey stick to be the super venture backed venture scale kind of operation as quickly as you can go profitable and maybe try and just run it longer so you can catch the wave. And maybe, I left the company. I didn't stay the long haul the way my co-founder Noah did. Like maybe one co-founder who wants to do more lifestyle or stick around through profitable, not venture scale, they can do that. Maybe you hire someone else to do that. But
Mhm.
why give up your assets? Like in hindsight, maybe we could have just somehow find a way to hold on to it. I think more founders are wising up to that. Like, be careful getting on the venture, brutal kind of scale of where you have to keep climbing this ladder and hitting these milestones. Be careful not getting onto it unless you really want to get on the treadmill, is the right analogy. But also knowing when to get off the treadmill. I've helped some founders with that. And it's okay to say, hey, maybe this wasn't the right thing. And now I'll just go slower and I'll be profitable and I'll grow off my own profits and wait to catch some tailwinds later, maybe.
You also strike me as the kind of person that's drawn to new ideas and probably wouldn't want to stick with something for 15 years, grinding it out over a 15-year period because something new would come along that you'd be excited about, which is what happened. TrialPay, you start shortly after Stitcher.
Yeah, so I joined TrialPay. My friend Alex Rampell had co-founded that with Terry Angelos. Alex has since now moved on at Andreessen. He's been there, one of the longest standing partners there. And that was super interesting. But like you said, yeah, I did not too long there, but I did make a big impact with business development deals. I got more and more, starting with Stitcher, then TrialPay, and later Yelp, more and more into business development. And I saw like we were able to double our revenue from I think 20 to 40 million overnight by doing this deal with Facebook. But I put a ton of work on. I remember Alex had told me, Mike, I think there's a 1% chance we could be the exclusive monetization partner for Facebook platform and all this stuff they're launching with all these social games and the Facebook marketplace, or Facebook platform. Sorry. So he said, I think there's a 1% chance we could be the exclusive or de facto exclusive partner. But
And you
should
went
just
after it anyways.
do it. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
focus. He's like, do.
Right.
And I did it. And that helped get my reputation as like business development miracle worker a little bit.
And tell us, what did you do? Were you sending bottles of wine to Zuck? What are you
No,
doing?
no, that
Showing
doesn't
up at
work.
his house, knocking on the
That
door?
actually
Is
would
there-
backfire. And no, so there's a lot. We could spend a whole podcast just on like business development, but I'll give three highlights. One is really getting to know the whole mapping the organization. It's not just about like Zuck, although of course I did do anything I could do with Zuck, and I cold called like Sheryl Sandberg. I had met her through some alumni event at like a reunion, and I pinged her. I got time with everyone I could,
Okay.
obviously.
Did
But
you pitch
also
Zuckerberg himself? this
I
idea?
sent him emails and he was like involved. He came to one of the meetings. But again, you also you don't want to bother the CEO of a rocket
Right,
ship like that
right,
if he
right.
personally wasn't going to be like he was the personal final decision maker, but he didn't want to like weigh in on all the meetings. So you have to be careful, like know your
Yeah,
audience and
yeah.
know who actually wants to talk to you and cares about it. We luckily had there was like Deb Lou and all these great people there who actually really did care. So I had a map of like 30 different people. So it's a lot of enterprise sales
Beautiful
tactics.
Mind style just up on the
Yeah,
wall. Like, yeah.
exactly. Or I give the Wire, the television show on HBO.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you have
yeah.
all the people mapped
Connections.
out,
Yeah.
and then you know like who's your champion, who's the actual decider, right? Who are your allies and advocates? Who are your information sources who are not even involved in the decision, right? Who's skeptical? You're mapping every single person out and trying to figure out their roles and how they might relate, and just spending as much time there as possible. And then we had a little bit of a anti-sell strategy for that one too, where we said, look, you don't need to partner with us, but be careful who you partner with. Like if you should maybe just build it yourself. And here's we did actually 100 slide presentation and showed them how they could build it themselves. And they were like, oh wow, this is so hard. Like we need you guys to do this.
Oh, because you wanted to show them how difficult it would be to
Yeah,
build what
but
your
we were like,
solution.
it's
Yeah.
okay. But we
Yeah.
literally mapped it out for them. We gave
Yeah.
them the clear blueprint of exactly how they could do it and do
Right.
it right.
And
But
why
I think they
wouldn't they
saw,
do
we
it?
showed them under the hood. Some people hide what's under the hood.
Yeah.
Oh, I have this, magic over here. We showed them exactly how to copy us, but it was so complex. They were like, well, we really need this guy.
So they could have, but I mean, Meta doesn't strike me as a company that would be intimidated by something being too complex. Like they probably could throw enough engineering resources at it they
But
could figure it out.
non-core.
But this was
But
early.
figuring that out wasn't core to what they wanted to do.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense. All
Yeah,
right.
if
So
something's core, that's a different story. You're probably not going to partner with them on something core anyway.
got it. A good distinction. Any other lessons on the business development strategy around that? You said there were three different things that you might have
Yeah.
mentioned
So
them all
number
though.
one was this, mapping out the organization, knowing the champion, the decider, all these things, the influencers. Number two is, having a specific targeted, it's not one size fits all. Like in this case, it was the anti-sell strategy worked for us.
Hmm.
But for every situation is going to be different. Number three, a big thing I say is if you're not making a good friend after every, big BD partnership, you're probably doing it wrong. So I have lifelong friends from every major BD partnership I've done because it really gets personal and you really dig in and really get to know on a human level, like who are these people? What do they care about? What are they trying to accomplish? And if your partnership is not, especially for these deep strategic partnerships, if it's not going to really help them accomplish their goals, then you're wasting time for both of you.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
I did the same thing with Yelp and Apple and a bunch of others. Yelp and
Yeah, let's talk.
Microsoft.
Let's talk about that one because after that you go to Yelp and Eat24, and you're there for. I don't remember the exact trajectory of the Yelp period when it became big. I remember Yelp. I think I discovered Yelp around 2006, 2007, or something like
You were
that.
early, but yeah, it
Yeah,
was
I think it
founded
was.
'04 and started gaining traction around that like '05, '06, '07. But
Okay.
that was the early period.
Yeah.
It really got put on the map around 2012, like the IPO timeline. People got really
Okay. So
excited.
you're pre-IPO then. You
Yeah,
joined.
so the founder of Yelp, I knew from before he started it actually. And
He
back
also was
in
in the
that,
PayPal mafia, wasn't he?
he
Wasn't he
was
PayPal?
PayPal Mafia. He
Yeah.
was VP of
Yeah.
engineering at PayPal, worked for Max Levchin. Max was the chairman of our board. The idea for Yelp came up actually at a birthday lunch in the Ferry building for Max. And Jeremy, the founder, came up with the idea. I was like, why isn't there a site like this? So it's PayPal Mafia. And then I wrote Yelp's first sales contract with the first customer back in the day because I had been doing I was a business school section mate of the founder, Jeremy and
Hmm.
friend, and then I was also going to law school, and so he was like, "Oh, you're my like legal friend. Can you help with this contract?" So I helped him. I was like, "I'm not a real lawyer yet, but I
Yeah.
can help you." So I helped him out, and he tried to recruit me from early on, actually in the Stitcher days. But I thought Yelp was like too big because it was, I think, 20 people. And I was like, I'm gonna do my own startup. And luckily I got a second bite of the apple. He's like, hey, you should have come a long time ago. So it was still a pretty small company when I joined, and I was there for kind of hyper growth from, small revenue to billion in revenue. It was very exciting kind
Wow.
of period.
Wow. What a crazy
Along with my
ride.
partners now at Yelp, Jeff Donaker, who's the original COO from Yelp, who took it from 0 to a billion. And our original CFO who took it public and a VP of Ops are all on our team.
And these are the folks that you're working with now, which I'll get
That's
to in
right.
a second. But
Yeah, we'll get to that.
you eventually become CEO of Yelp E24. So explain to those who don't know what E24 was,
Yeah.
and how did you have to grow personally as
Oh,
you
yeah.
worked into that role?
So look, prior to Yelp, I'd managed small teams, right? And then at Yelp, I built this great business and corporate development team, starting with, one person who's still there. Peter Curzon, still the VP of Business Development now, but he came up as an associate all the way a couple years out of college. And, we built to 5, 10. So basically, I had managed teams of up to maybe 20 people, but I'd never managed hundreds. And then E24, I was the vice president of business and corporate development, did all of our M&A and partnerships for 5 years at first. And then we were partnered with this small company, E24. When we met them, there were a handful of people. I don't know if they were a million in revenue or less when we started partnering with them or met them. But eventually, we acquired them. They were doing online food delivery, and we realized there was a big opportunity for having online food delivery happening right on the Yelp platform. First, we partnered with a few folks, but E24 ran circles around all the partners, including Grubhub, who we tried to partner with. E24 just out executed everybody. So we when they had interest from others in getting acquired, I told them, no, you better talk to us. Like, we really want to buy you. So we bought the company. It was 150 people and 150 million in gross transaction volume. And they asked me to be CEO of this subsidiary. Both Yelp asked me, but also the founder of E24 said, hey, I'm not a corporate guy. I knew, he knew his shtick, and he was like, hey, don't take it as a bad signal, but I'm out. I'll stay for however long you need me, but I want to hand it over to somebody, and I think it should be you, because I knew the business really well. And I said, okay, I guess both sides are asking me, I'm going to take this plunge. And I had to do a ton of personal growth, like going to managing 150 people. By the way, over 2 years, we grew a revenue to, we grew employees to 500 people, like over 3x, and revenue to an 800 million or 750 million run rate.
Wow.
That's gross revenue, not net revenue. And then our net was like a percentage on that. So, we grew revenue even faster. So it was a very hard thing to do. There were all kinds of people issues and management stuff I had to figure out, managing teams of managers and what the right layers are.
Totally different animal from everything else, right?
Yeah. I came up with this theory of MVB. I call it minimum viable bureaucracy. How to what the processes are you need, but not a penny or ounce more of extra bureaucracy, right? Bureaucracy is the word people use to describe it when it's gotten out of hand and you think of like the government or these overly large organizations, but you do need some management, right? So how do you do that? Perfectly sized management and communication layers. And I was very fortunate to have a guy who just joined as CEO of Ironclad. He was CEO of DocuSign. He mentored me for free. So I had a free CEO coach in addition to obviously the Yelp CEO and CEO, other people on the board were all helpful, but to have like a third party coach that normally pay a lot of money. This one CEO I knew through nonprofit work, he said, hey, Mike, I'm in between CEO jobs, and he'd been 3-time CEO. He said, if you just come to my condo and we can meet at a coffee shop somewhere. And he fortunately lived a block away from our office. So it all just stars aligned. And so I learned a lot about managing these teams and building up your lieutenants, all kinds of stuff that I work with founders on now as they hopefully achieve that hyperscale from going from one or two founders to 10 to 100 and then, beyond 100 to 500.
And as you look back in this period of time in your career, do you think that you enjoyed this period of time, or did you?
Oh, yeah.
Or did you find that you were sucked into a corporate behemoth? And no, it sounds like you enjoyed it.
I loved it. And especially the Yelp time. I was there for 7 years as my longest professional experience for a reason. That I really enjoyed it. I will say that E24 piece in particular was trial by fire. So I absolutely loved it, but I also probably aged quite a bit. I already had a lot of respect for what startup CEOs did. But then I thought, okay, it gets bigger and you scale your team and everything's just kind of running and it works. And then I realized just how hard it is to manage hundreds of people effectively, right? Anyone can just manage them. But how do you actually then grow 5x in 2 years and do that stuff? And it's really, really hard. There's a reason I could have then tried to be a career CEO. There's a reason I didn't go back to that. I think I probably, if I had to do operating again, it would probably be more SVP, biz dev, corp dev kind of stuff I was doing, managing those lean and mean teams. Just kind of more like running a venture capital firm, which I kind of enjoy. I think that side of it more than that large team management. at the long run. But at the time, it was an incredible opportunity and experience.
Yeah. So you actually after that go into the back into the venture capital world, which you'd
Yeah.
spent a little bit of time earlier in your career.
Yeah.
And was that a deliberate decision? Were you ready for a break from the startup world at that point? You probably, let's
Yeah.
see, this is 2018. We have kids around the same age, so you probably have kids by this point.
Yeah, yeah. I had two small kids. It was 2017 when I first started, seriously considering venture capital. The thing is, yeah, I went to Summit Partners after business school because I fell in love with the idea of VC and investing, and that's kind of what I want to do when I grew up and what I want to do with my life. But I thought, you know what, the best investors I found are actually former founder operators, know how to build companies. So that's the kind of VC I want to be, right? And I want to actually talk to a founder and say, hey, I've been there. And by the way, I do that on a near daily basis now. So it's really been helpful for me to say, I've been in your shoes. I know just this morning I was having a conversation with a founder like this. And so I'm not just making it up, as I go along or saying, well, I've been on
Yeah.
the other side of the table and I've observed. And so I thought I was only going to be a founder operator after Summit Partners, maybe for like 3 to 5 years and then jump into VC. But I just had such a good time, and largely because of Yelp too, that I stayed for 10 years. So it
Hmm.
was kind of long overdue, and VCs have been recruiting me for a while. And so when I finally took the plunge, I knew I was going to VC. I kind of had thought about it for a long time, and it felt long overdue.
And you specialize in AI and also marketplaces, which Yelp is a marketplace. So you've
Yeah.
been involved in Faire and some of these other businesses, but you also have other companies like Cloud Kitchens that you've been involved in and Strava. So it sounds like you've kind of taken interest in various different ones.
Yeah, so it burst, and it is similar to my personal investing background. We're pretty generalists across the kind of AI software marketplaces stack. Most of the non we I was going to say most of the non-hardware and non like pharmaceutical, but we even have Hatch Baby in the portfolio. That's a hardware driven, super successful company that's grown to real scale. So we're pretty open-minded. But I have typically gravitated to something in those three, software, now AI increasingly, and then marketplaces. It's tended to fall in those buckets. Cloud Kitchen was a picks and shovels play. As I saw what was going on in the food delivery marketplaces, I realized there was an opportunity there. The founder, before Travis Kalanick actually took the CEO role, he was an advisor.
So
Was
as
founded this
former
guy
founder of Uber who
of
got
Uber,
into the
yeah.
space. Yeah.
So this guy
Oh, sorry, he
Diego.
got involved in that company. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
the CEO now, but
Oh,
Diego
okay.
Verdaken was the original founder, pitched me on the idea while I was still at Yelp E24. And I
Hmm.
said, "Hey, it sounds really hard. If you could build this, I would love to, partner with you at Yelp, maybe invest." And then sure enough, once I was at Social Capital, he really did it. And he knew our team there. And so that was a great investment. And then Travis came on as CEO and it ended up growing much bigger. So that's become a very large company. Fair Wholesale, which you mentioned, obviously very big on the marketplace side. Superhuman, Strava. There's a bunch I've been able to get involved with early, and then a bunch of really exciting ones in the Burst portfolio we can talk about also.
Yeah. It's interesting you specialize in marketplaces because marketplaces are notoriously hard to establish. So
Yeah,
I'm wondering what the secret sauce is. How
yeah,
when you look at different marketplaces, there's so many marketplaces. How many marketplaces do we know that we've never heard of or that
yeah.
fizzle out because it's so difficult to gain traction? But why do you think that you like that space?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's worth saying out loud. Marketplaces have been pretty quiet. I think marketplaces often require some sort of a platform shift or innovation to really take off. So with kind of Web 1.0, there was this big marketplace boom, and then there was this second wave of Web 2.0 that also got a bunch of fuel by mobile. And so Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Airbnb, like some of those, Uber didn't even exist pre-mobile and DoorDash, right? Airbnb and Yelp kind of did, but then really rode the mobile coattails and wave. So marketplaces kind of need that fuel, I think, because it changes the paradigm. Uber said, "Oh, now you've got a phone. Everyone's got this computer in their hands and GPS," and it unlocked these new models. Then I think it slowed down because all the ideas were tried. Everybody picked over a lot of it, and we still see some, but it became less frequent. Like Fair Wholesale, B2B, and other marketplaces then maybe took off. But now with AI, you have such a big revolution that not only is there a SaaS and software revolution that we're a big part of with companies like OfferFit, right? That I led the Series A, and that just announced it was being acquired recently. But you also have, I think marketplaces are going to come. But frankly, it's been kind of quiet. I'm waiting now for the next resurgence, but I'm definitely putting it out there. So marketplace founders who somehow found these new tailwinds, whether related to AI or otherwise, hopefully would come find me.
And let's talk about the AI for job creation idea, because
Yeah.
you did a keynote at an event we both attended recently.
Yeah.
And I thought it was so contrarian, right? Everyone else is talking about job losses. You're talking about job creation.
Absolutely. Well, one slide I walked through at that presentation was just data on the Industrial Revolution, steam powered, revolution, and then there was electrification, and then Web 1.0. And in each of these, there's headlines and a bunch of fear. The cycle is actually predictable. Everyone's like, "Oh, we're going to lose all these jobs," and there is job displacement. And I don't want to minimize that. I actually take that very seriously. There's also been, as the accelerationists, kind of will argue, a lot of job creation with every tech shift, and every new wave and boom of technology. The problem is, what do you do in the transition period? How do you create jobs for these people who are later in their career or just got trained for one thing and that thing becomes irrelevant? And it's hard to predict when it's moving. And the challenge is cycle time's gotten so much faster. So now with AI, it feels like maybe it's happening so quickly and people are concerned.
Right. What do you skill people on if that's going to be irrelevant 2 years from now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to, but I would say that actually the playbook is out there. There was a book I encourage everyone to read, Average is Over by Tyler Cowen, that was actually written right before this AI boom and the ChatGPT big launch. But he kind of correctly predicted everything, is talking about a lot of it. And there are all these skilled jobs where you're working with AI. So that's step one, is like find a way that you can work with AI and you can be a huge asset. Someone was just asking me about what to do yesterday for their young college grad kid. And they're like, "Oh, is the job market cooked? And is my economics major college grad going to be able to do anything?" I was like, "No, not at all. If he's an economics major, why don't you have him just go learn all the latest AI tools for econometrics, have them know how to run AI and Claude and Gemini and everything all in parallel and come up with the latest economic data, and then walk in an interview saying, I will actually make sure that you guys can use AI most effectively." That's why I had all those software jobs in college, is I learned all the latest internet tools. And I said, "Hey, I can create a dynamic data-driven website for you. And I know the database tools and I know, the ASP Windows architecture, but I also know Cold Fusion and this other stuff and SQL. And if you can learn all those tools for AI, you're super valuable on the job market at a young age, as well at any point in your career." In addition, I'm interested in startups that are using AI for other kinds of job creation. I talked about like AI to help people learn new trades. We're going to have a big boom for electricians and HVAC and all this stuff to underpin all these data centers that AI needs. So there's a bunch of just hands-on. If you don't like tech and using software or whatever, there's also all these skilled trades for you that are now opening up, right? So can you build startups to help people learn those or get accredited in those? And anyway, there's so many opportunities. You just have to be willing to look ahead a little bit at the puck and embrace the shifting landscape and try to ask friends and other people and read online, watch talks like this to understand where the puck might be going.
Yeah. And what are you consuming? Where do you get where do you study,
Yeah, get all
where
the
are you getting
information.
information? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a variety of sources. I feel like I'm bombarded with a bunch of sources. I'll give a plug. Actually, my sister is one of the leading AI journalists. She does it at Bloomberg. So her, same last name. You can look her up. She's a great source for AI information. There's a lot of other AI newsletters, but hers on Bloomberg I really like. There's a bunch of publications I follow. I get a morning digest every morning of all the VC and tech deals.
Mm.
There's one like Connie Loizos from TechCrunch does the strictly VC one. Dan Primack, Axios has one that's really popular too. I go on social media, so on LinkedIn and Twitter/X. There's a bunch of information and accounts I follow there. People are emailing me things all the time, and unfortunately, I just have a large network. So I gather a bunch of information kind of on and off the record. People are sending me stuff, and then I try to do a good job of disseminating that out and talking about it when I hear interesting kind of. So there's traditional media, Economist, Wall Street Journal, all those sources, but then all these newer media kind of formats too. Podcasts is another big source. So I'm trying to always stay up to date on what are newest podcasts that might be, have interesting trends.
And now you've joined forces with your Yelp team, a lot of the folks that you worked with back then. You were an advisor to Burst Capital, and you've joined back up with them, and you have this theme around Main Street, AI and software intersection with Main Street. Explain what that is exactly.
Yeah. So one insight we had is if you take Main Street and SMB and define it broadly. So right away, when people hear Main Street, they think of stores, like a lot of these storefronts that are on Yelp, like restaurants and retail and local businesses. And there's also, there's all kinds of blue collar businesses. They might not even have a shop, right? So we talked about your local electrician and plumber and HVAC, and then even white collar. There's doctor, dentist, lawyer. These are all categories on Yelp. These are all I would call Main Street businesses that people need to go to, not large, tech behemoths like Google, but part of our basic, block and tackle economy. And these Main Street businesses, if you look up the stats, are actually 46% of US private employment and 44% of US GDP. It's a huge part of our economy, Main Street. But I would say that software sometimes can neglect it. I think when software has jumped on it, so we talked about DoorDash, Lyft, Uber, not to mention Yelp. It's been very successful. And so now AI and the new startups need to, I think, pay attention to Main Street. And we're excited to fund those businesses, given we have a deep expertise and background there. That's a big category for us. So like owner.com is one that started doing software and AI for local businesses, restaurants starting and then branching out from there. They just raised, we came in very early before the Series A. They just raised a $120 million Series C at $1 billion valuation. So they're one of these unicorns now. And I think there's lots of opportunity there if people just look. Cloud kitchens we talked about is in that Main Street theme as well.
Yeah, yeah. Mike, this has been great. I want to wrap up, and I'm a big fan of gratitude. So I'm a big fan of both expressing gratitude. I'm grateful to you for sharing your wisdom here today, and also giving my guests a little bit of space at the end here to acknowledge, the relationships, the people that have been helpful for them. Sometimes people default and they mention their family, but I love to hear stories about peers, contemporaries, maybe LPs in your fund. Maybe you mentioned that mentor, the CEO coach that you had. Who would you want to acknowledge?
Yeah. So there's a long list, so it's always tough. So first, thank you for having me on. This has been fun. This is great. I really, speaking of peers, my partners, so Jeff Donaker, COO of Yelp, originally, who's now general partner and founder of Burst. I work with him really closely. He, mentor turned, partner and peer and co-investor, has been really influential for me, as well as Rob Krolik, my partner, and Wendy Lim. They're amazing. But also all the partners I've had, my partners from Canvas Ventures, Rebecca Lynn, Paul Shao, Gary Little, my partners from Social Capital, all, peers and my whole team at Yelp. Anyway, it's going to start sounding like an Oscar speech because there's so many people to that. There's my family and all my friends. So again, it's hard to know where to start. I've been so fortunate just to have so many people work closely. Harrison Lieberfarb, the newest partner at Canvas, who's worked so closely with me. There's so many people who've been influential. And then, by the way, there's all the founders I've invested in. So as an investor, ultimately, you're working with these founders, and that. So I mentioned OfferFit, George, who just had that successful outcome there. But there's so many other all the companies I mentioned today, plus so many other founders. It's tough to even go through them all, but as much time as you'll give me, I'm happy to go.
No, it's great. And the funny thing is, Mike and I, we live in the same town. Our kids are friends, and I get to see you on the bike path because I bike to work, and you are constantly on the phone with someone. And now I'm going to picture you're going to be talking to one of those people you just mentioned.
Oh yeah,
mentoring them through something. You even give me tips on how to get a headset that will work with all the wind on.
I actually have a special wind setup. A guy in Sweden made one for a while and sold it, but it's not very profitable. It's a commodity product. Yeah. So no one's selling them anymore. So I had to learn how to do a homegrown version. I can actually get you set up.
That's great. That's great. Mike, where can people go to learn more about you, connect with you, and learn more about Burst Capital?
Oh yeah, go to burst.vc. That's our website. So that's a bunch of information. You can also follow me on LinkedIn under my name, as well as Twitter at New Mike. And yeah. Look forward to hearing from you guys.
Mike, thanks so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.